you for tuning in. My name is Danny, and this is the Common Rule Podcast. Okay, today's conversation is with Johnny Medina, a.k.a. Johnny Black Sox, a photographer here in Phoenix. And he's been doing this a long time. He jumps back and forth. If you look at his Instagram, there's a lot of LA, East LA stuff in there too. We have a great conversation. It is a bit on the long side, so if you have a trip, this would be perfect for you to listen as we talk about family, community, the importance of printing your work and having an art show, especially here in Phoenix, and what Johnny had to go through when he lost his leg and the emotional mountains he had to climb to overcome that, both physical and emotional pain. Check out the notes for the links as far as Johnny's Instagram, his website, of course. And there's a couple other links that we talk about here that I think would be very important or very cool for you to follow along as well. Learned a lot on this one. It's a very great conversation. Hope you guys enjoy it. If you guys have any questions, drop me a line, an email. It's thecommonrule@gmail.com. You can follow me on Instagram at The Common Rule, and Twitter is Restless Samurai. All right, thank you again for listening. Have a great day, and I will talk to you soon.
Don't be afraid to dive in whatever area you want to go into.
Hey, careful what you wish for.
Hey,
man.
I'm open, man. You know what I mean? If we're going to do it, you might as well give it to them as 100% raw as they need to have it,
Now, when I take a look at your Instagram, I would, if I didn't know that you say Phoenix on there's a lot of stuff from LA posted on there. You spend a lot of time in Los Angeles?
Well, yeah. Yeah, I mean, technically, I would say that's probably that's where my heart is.
Okay.
But the car club that I'm in is LA based. So, we were just there 2 weeks ago for a meeting and spent the weekend there. And I have some pretty strong history there, with some people in the culture and some of my some of my peers and mentors that have impacted my work, on a very serious level are LA based. So, yeah, there's definitely a deep connection there.
Now, the most obvious one of those mentors that I think, and I apologize if it's not who, but when I look at your work, bam, I can equate it with Esteban Orioles real quick. Mm-hmm. Would it be fair to say that he is one of your mentors, or at least
I would say on well, we're in the same club together, car club wise.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're in the same car club.
Oh, wow.
So but the first time him and his father and I showed together was it had a very big impact on me, and Eddie Bertolo told me something quite simply. He said, you don't need anybody else to validate your work but yourself. And it took a little while to process that, but once I was able to grasp it and kind of get my mind around what he was talking about, it really had a serious impact. But yeah, among others, but you can't deny Esteban's work on any level, because looking at what he's done, for how long he's done it and how well he's done it, I think he's, whether inadvertent or directly, he's mentoring anybody with a camera. That's in the field. That's in that genre, anyways. So.
Yeah, and that's exactly such a valid. When I think of his work, there was a, especially in that genre, in those themes, in those portraits. Mm-hmm. There's I always come back to he's got a really good quote that I like, but one of the quotes that I listen to in that genre is that comes back to me. I'm a huge Jimi Hendrix fan, and Billy Cox, his bassist towards the end, had a quote, and he's there's only two type of guitar players in the world: those who admit that they're influenced by Jimi Hendrix and those that don't. And in that kind of genre, I get the same vibe from Esteban and his dad.
Yeah.
Too, where like if you're in that environment, there's no way that type of photography didn't hit you in some level.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's why I say, you know, whether inadvertently or not, whether you've able to grasp it or come to terms with it, they definitely have impacted the genre. And then if you go back to his father's, you know, activism in San Diego and what was going on there and why he picked up a camera, I think it's even more important, you know, that you really come to terms with what is it they've been doing with their cameras for so long, you know. And you know, not to kind of, but I guess I'll give you my own personal impact. They're polar opposites of each other, but very similar, you know. And you can tell that Esteban is definitely taken from what his dad has done. But you know, they're raw. They're giving you a window into what you might not otherwise be able to grasp or get a touch of, but you know, they're on opposite sides of the freeway, if you will.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, beautiful work. Beautiful, beautiful work. So,
and searching through your Instagram, another mentor is Pep.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of hip hop.
Definitely. It's probably been now, I would say probably about 6 to 7 years since I met Pep. And Pep was just, you know, he became a very, very, very close friend.
Yeah.
And, you know, those conversations that have occurred and his mentoring and his guidance, you know, guiding me through, you know, his experiences and what he's learned and giving it to me to try and advance, you know, where my career was headed and you know, artistically, professionally. But, you know, once that door's closed, well, you know, ultimately, you know, there's a serious friendship that has occurred there, you know. So, but yeah, I mean, talented, extremely talented, and has shot, you know, some of the biggest names. And
and I think that it's important because in these like two situations, I think even though your theme might be the same with Esteban or you draw a vibe from Pep, I think it's important to note that you can draw influence and inspiration and not necessarily steal other people's ideas or overall styles and come up with your own, no matter who your influences are.
Yeah, and that's I think that's been a serious journey for me, you know, trying to maintain creatively what has been, you know, my own onda for a long time. You know, since I picked up a camera, I knew that I was going to shoot what I was able to identify as part of my experience, you know, and that's what I tell people. I shoot what I know, you know, and everybody that you see a picture that I've taken of it's a reflection of me in one way or another. You know, and I think that's why, you know, some of my images come across so vividly and so passionately. It's because, you know, it's like I'm taking a picture of myself in one way or another, you know, and I don't, you know, sometimes people say, well, what do you want me to wear? You know, or what colors do you want? It's like, I don't want to have any impact on that. You know, I mean, if it's not something that's 100% true to what you are, then I don't want to shoot it. You know, there's plenty of other people that can do that. You know, that's just not where I want to be with my camera, you know? So it's, yeah, finding that identification of what your work is about and staying true to it. But, you know, there's also at the same time growing, you know, there's a serious, learning curve and growth curve that occurs when, you know, you decide that you want to stay active and you want to stay on point and you want to keep people, you know, drawn into what they're seeing and what you're doing. It's not easy.
When did you realize this? At one point, did you say, you know what? I need to do my thing. I need to have my reflection in each and every single one as a growth, because I'm sure that maybe, as far as my thing goes, it took me a little bit to figure out and go, hey, you know what? Forget what other people are saying. That's not giving me any artistic, creative license anyway. When did you realize that, hey, your voice is stronger than what may or may not be, let's say, commercially acceptable?
Oh yeah, well, I think for me that's kind of where I've always been. You know, I've never been about what's going to be the most lucrative road to travel on, and for the longest time, I couldn't even sell a picture, you know, because I couldn't put a price on it because they were all so personal to me. You know, I looked at them like, no, I don't want to sell that. I want to keep that in my house, you know, or that experience that was captured on film at that point was so personal that I don't want to give it away to somebody else, you know, who may not really understand it. So that's kind of where I've always been. But at one point or another, you know, you have to decide, okay, this has to be lucrative in some sense, you know, when you're spending, you know, X amount of dollars on gear. You know, I mean, you know, you understand what that's like.
Oh, there's
a
cart over there, about 20 cameras, and there's some on the stove.
Exactly, man. You know what it's like, you know, and, you know, the reality is that obviously, you know, I have a family and of course, you know, I want to benefit them as much as I can. And I think going back to what your question was, in 2005 is when the conversation occurred, you know, and it was like, okay, maybe this is something that I really, really need to like start investing lots of time into, you know, even more than what I was at that particular moment. And since then, you know, it's just been nonstop, nonstop.
And what is it that, I always tell people that, you know, that want to get into photography and ask you what kind of camera and things like that. They always say, you know, I don't see photography as a be all end all as being, like being passionate about photography isn't a thing. I think that being passionate about something and using photography, is there something, I mean, obviously you're in the car clubs and things like that. And if anybody would scroll through your Instagram, I think you could see more or less what you're most passionate about here. But if you had to put that in the words, where does your passion come from to start creating, maybe not just photograph wise, but in any other creative output that you might have?
Well, that's family. Family. You know, when people have asked me, like, you know, what's your work about? And quite simply, I want to be able to say 20 years from now, you know, 30 years from now, when people are looking at my work, you know, that my sons can say, my dad was important in being, you know, that instrument to reflect what was going on, you know, with our people, with what was going on the streets, what was going on, you know, in the ghettos and the barrios, in those instances where, like I said, people may not have a window into grasping what's really happening, you know, and that's where the motivation really comes from. And that started with, you know, with my mother, you know, being, you know, her being a photographer, with, you know, my family being activists, and really just kind of always being in it, man. You know, when you're raised around it, it just kind of becomes part of your psyche, you know, it becomes part of who you are and how you operate, you know. I mean, and the camera is just one more tool to providing, like I said, that opportunity for people to really see what's happening. But, you know, my families are just, it's the most important creative aspect. You know, it's the most important motivation. It's what keeps me going. You know, so. And
by family, it's not just your immediate family, but
yeah, and we're all creative.
Big.
Yeah, I mean, we're all, fortunately, you know, I mean, whether it's my aunts who are artists, you know, who have helped develop the Dia de los Muertos, you know, culture here in the Valley.
Oh, wow.
You know,
okay.
You know, my mother, my aunts, my mother's a photographer, you know, brothers are photographers. So we're all very creative in one way or another, you know, but at the bottom of it all, if you take your cameras away and you say, okay, what are you really about? It's really been about the people. Yeah.
How, even though your work is personal to, as far as what you've stated before, like, you know, you want to reflect yourself in just about any portrait or any photograph that you make, at the same time, creating that window, how important is for someone who has maybe lived in a part of Phoenix that doesn't really mix with the rest of the Latino or Mexican culture here, how important is it to provide a window to somebody who's more or less ignorant of that and say, hey, we're not invisible, we're here as well? Because sometimes it happens, I do see that even some photographers in other parts that have a Latino community, their photography is way different.
Yeah, it's, you know, there aren't any color lines with the people that I that I take pictures of.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't say I'm just taking pictures of raza. You know what I mean? I'm just going to do that, and that's all it's going to be. No, if you've lived, you know, the way that I was raised, and there's a connection that's happening between you and I, then there's motivation there for me to want to grab you. You know what I mean? There's motivation for me to want to take your pictures. But it is important for me to put that picture up of, you know, that guy who's fully tatted down, you know, who looks like he might not be the man you want to be inviting into your house, but yet he's law enforcement, you know, and getting people to come to terms with what their own paradigms are, what their own issues are, and just take a step back and really start to think about what it is that they're looking at. That's really, you know, that's a positive thing for me, you know, and there has been instances, I'm not going to lie to you, there's been times when, you know, we've put work up and, you know, I'm getting a call saying, well, this may not be the place for you to be, you know, exhibiting your work. And I'm okay with that. Okay. You know, I really am. I have no qualms whatsoever about saying, okay, well, you know, it's there. You know, it's going to stay up for however long we agreed upon, you know, whether you think it's maybe a little bit too raw for your, you know, for your people or your clients at that point. But, you know, if they're causing you to identify what some of your own issues are, then I'm going to go and shoot 10 more of those images. Yeah. You know? So, yeah, definitely.
From those, let's just say, pushback reactions that you've gotten, do you feel it was just the theme or the content of your photographs, or do you feel like they were honestly saying, okay, our clients aren't going to dig this, or is it just flat out bad people who aren't?
Well, I think there's a certain level of when people are confronted with stepping outside of their comfort zones, you know, it becomes an issue of, okay, is this commercially acceptable? You know, when you know, that curator is having to now look at, okay, was this the best avenue for me to travel down? You know, but it's not going to change what I'm doing. You know, not in one small instance is it ever going to say like, damn, maybe I shouldn't take that picture because somebody was offended by it. You know, if you were offended by it and it caused some personal issues, then I'm doing something right.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, and I'm not gonna, I don't want, you know, I don't want to shoot a cover model. You know, I don't want to shoot, you know, somebody that looks like they just, you know, came off of a GQ spread, you know, because that's not who I am. You know, I can't. Could I do it? Sure. You know, could I technically pull it off? Absolutely. You know, could I get you in the studio? Could I set up the lighting? Could I knock it out and provide, you know, a commercial client with what maybe they needed? Sure. But there's 100 other guys who could do that, you know? Could 100 other guys step into, you know, some of the hardest areas in the valley, you know, at 2:00 in the morning and pull out their camera and get a pass to take a picture? Not necessarily, but I could, you know? So that's where I'm going to continue to travel. You know, but again, going back to your initial question, yeah, if they're offended by it or it causes some issues, then that means I'm just doing something right.
You're not going to change to have more commercially acceptable imagery.
No, absolutely not. It's like I said, there's plenty of other people that you know can do the commercial and the product aspect, and people who enjoy it, people who are good at it, people who you know excel at it, but that's just not where my passion is. It's not where my creative motivation is.
When you bring your camera to otherwise inaccessible area at 2 a.m., how you just said, what do you think you're trying to capture in order to show someone else? What do you think you're trying to bring out to more or less, aside from culture? Is there some sort of undertone that we're not grasping as the people who can't get to those areas, that you would say, this is what you missed out on, this is what you need to see? My culture allows for this at 2 a.m. in a back alley or something like that.
Yeah, there's struggle. There's stories, there's lives, there's plenty of personal experience that's happening 24 hours a day, man. And just because it's 2 a.m. doesn't mean that somebody's life has stopped. And I don't ever load up a camera and say, like, I'm going to go out, I'm going to capture something tonight. I don't ever have that kind of motivation to say, like, tonight I got to get something on camera. I got to get something going here. It's usually my camera was with me, something was going down, and I just had the pure opportunity of just being able to capture it. The very important Leica photographer has said that some of the most impactful photographs that he's ever judged or has ever seen were just people who just caught an instance. It wasn't planned. It wasn't maybe technically 100% the way it should have been, but it was just pure, and they were able to capture that moment, and that moment, is important for what it was. And again, going back to what my comment was about, my boys being able to say, God, my dad was 100%. He was real with what he was capturing, and it sure was reflective of the people and the time period. Because obviously we're forever growing.
Yeah, there's as a photographer, because I can't draw, right? One of the people that the importance when you have your camera that way, it's a fraction of a second, any way you measure it, whether it's half a second or 1/8,000th of a second. You only have that moment to. I can't go home and draw it out and have the memory, and then I have infinite focus, and then have or perfect focus or whatever it is I want, a perfect lighting as a photographer. And I think that's one of the things that. Do you think in this era we might be missing out as to what true photography is to do that, as opposed to, I love shooting with my cell phone, and this Instagram mentality is, I have a love-hate relationship with it. But do you feel that there's somehow watered down photography going on in the themes that in the same themes that you shoot, in the same genre that you shoot, that you hope that your kids know that you're real? What do you think is some of that things that are people capturing that is not real? What any cliches that are going out there that are like troublesome?
I had this conversation last night, about do I necessarily want to touch on that? And I think that for me personally, if you're shooting and you're capturing, and that's where you're at in your particular growth cycle, cool, right? When I do trainings, when I do seminars, one of the things I tell people is, I do not care what it is that you're shooting with, just capture what is passionate for you, capture what excites you, capture something that stirs those emotions, and you think, your viewers might be stirred by it. Now, on the flip side of that coin, I think there's a definite loss of in what photography is as an art form. But I think the reality nowadays is that if you hand the majority of these people who call themselves photographers, because it's easy to do, if you hand them a film camera, if you hand them a film unit and say, here, set this camera up for me and figure it out, they're going to look at you like, what the hell? that's not my thing. I shoot with my cell phone, and that's okay. Again, I'm not, I'm not breaking bad on it. I'm not downing it at all. But I think there is a definite loss in the art form. And I going back to what we were talking about, you think there's, and I agree with you as far as there being a resurgence in film and people knowing what their units are and how to properly use them is a good thing, and I hope to see more of it. And this may be fucked up for me to say, man, but green box shooters is what I call them. Auto shooters. And again, if that's where your comfort level is, and if that's where you're at in your growth cycle, fine. But I think you and I are very well aware that there's so much more possibilities with your camera than that.
The term, and I had this conversation as well with someone else, is that the term fine art is overused because most of the time people's work isn't fine and it ain't art.
Yeah.
And it's across all genres.
It is. There's no denying it.
Yeah.
And the fact that somebody can easily just snap a picture with their phone and it goes up on Instagram or it goes up on their Facebook page and then it's out there for everybody to see. I think those who have really put the time in, those who really are serious about what they're doing, you can easily separate, who is 100% about, capturing with their cameras and, who's just doing it, with their cell phones or, whatever it may be that they picked up at the moment. And like I said, that's okay, man.
There's some great cell phone photographers out there, and I don't mind telling you, sometimes some of the best photographs I've taken are on my cell phone. But
some of the best photographs I've taken were 15 years ago with a point and shoot. You know what I mean? And again, it was just being there for that opportune moment, that
1984.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's again, that's why I made the comment. If that's where you're at in your growth cycle, if that's what you're doing, fine. Just do it as best as you possibly can. And if that's where you want to stay, cool. If you want to continue to grow, even better. But everybody's going to have their own ondas. Everybody's going to have their own cycles.
And when do you talk about how important is it if you're really going to go out and create a piece? Do you pre-visualize what it is that you're looking for, what your theme is, or at least the emotion that you want to capture? I think that's one of the things as far as what separates art from a snapshot is how much thought process goes into to trying to translate what you're doing. Do you have any sort of workflow that goes into?
Sure. There's there's a definite connection that I try and establish with all of the people that I photograph. Trying to understand what it is that motivates them, trying to understand what their story is, and then figuring out what's the best way to present them to the world. Now on the technical side of it, sure, there's time invested. There's pre-shots that's going on. There's getting out there at different times of the day to figure out what the lighting is going to look like, or what I might be challenged with once we're on site. So yeah, most definitely. But I think it always starts with getting to know who that person is, if I have that opportunity. But let's just flip side that conversation. Working with I'm not sure if you're familiar with John Linton. Have you met him by chance?
No.
He's the gentleman who started the I Have a Name homeless project.
Okay.
And it's now the Let's Be Better Humans bus. Have you seen that around downtown by chance?
No, actually.
Humongous following here, in the valley. And when I first met John, I think it was probably now about 5 years ago, we were both shooting homeless people, right? And I think that's somewhat exploitative when you look at some of the work that's being produced, by some of the people out there. But, when I try and explain the process to people, like for every 10 images that you may see of that I've taken of somebody who lives on the streets or maybe who's in a shelter or whatever it may be, there's 10 other instances when it was purely just about support, So it may be that we're driving down the street, I see somebody who obviously needs some support and we're stopping, and it's, have you eaten? Are you thirsty? Do you need medical support? What's going on? What are your immediate needs? And then if the conversation occurs and we're sitting there, we're having a smoke about it, and we're just conversating, and that opportunity comes up to be like, would you like your image captured and shared? Well, it happens, but, so I think there's 180s, sometimes you get to plan it and you get to conversate with that person beforehand and you get to know them on a personal level. And then there's other times when you're just on the streets and you're taking pictures, so it really just depends.
Going into that project, I like what you said that certain aspects of that type of photography can be exploitive.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Because I look at a lot of people who, quote unquote, let's just say, are starting out in photography. And I'm from San Diego, so I went to TJ a lot. Mm-hmm. And there's always the lady selling chiclets, and they're all homeless. They're all dirty, and they're kids, and maybe they're homeless, maybe they're not, maybe they're just really poor. And people have always decided that they wanted to capture photos of those. Mm-hmm. And even when they go out on these Fernal, and not just Mexico, but you see a lot of people, and I'm like, why is that necessary? It's even if at the best technical aspect of it being a portrait, the portrait of the poor person on the street seems like, and if there's no backstory to it, to the point mm-hmm. where like you're saying, okay, well, no, I was helping them out or something like that.
Well, and I understand where you're going with that. Yeah. It's again providing. It's giving awareness, to the fact that a mile away from what's bougie and what's what's easy on the eye, there still may be 50 people who are living on the street. Mm-hmm. And without that awareness, it's going to continue to be that area that people put in the dark, that I don't necessarily have to tackle or be aware of or help in any way, and it's never about just snapping that picture and then moving on. There's always a story that's occurring with that, and if you look at some of those images and you read what's occurred there, there's been instances where, I put the word out, like, this gentleman needs help with glasses, and somebody will contact me and say, hey, you know what, I have a contact with this eye doctor. This is how you can get this gentleman the help, so there's definitely a cycle that's occurring there. Mm-hmm. It's not just about, oh, let me take a picture of somebody who looks like they're homeless.
And they just leave it at that.
Yeah. And that's why I say, I think there's an exploitative, motivation that sometimes occurs with that, and in talking with other photographers and helping them understand what it is that we're doing, and if I don't share, or like with John, for example, if he doesn't share what he's doing, if he's not providing an insight for people to understand, then how does that network grow? How does he get to 100,000 followers? And the moment he says, hey, I'm taking a trip to Mexico to provide clothing and food for these people, he's funded, without providing that window, nobody ever really knows, mm-hmm. So there's definite, activism, and, humanistic support that I think is at its core there.
And like you and your friend are doing, there's extra steps that need to,
always.
That you need to do in order to get to again, it's not just a snapshot of
No, the snapshot is it's probably the least of as far as on the importance level. The snapshot is really because let's take it back a few steps here. If you tell somebody, hey, I want to take your picture, or the conversation comes up in one way or another about about having their image, that provides them with a sense of pride, if you will, because you're telling them, hey, you are as important as anybody else, and you are deserving. Your story is deserving enough as anybody else is to have your image taken, and on a personal level, I can certainly draw on two images, one taken, down in Skid Row in Los Angeles, and one taken on 27th Avenue and Van Buren here, a mile away from where my mother grew up. I mean, where I grew up, at my mother's home, where, those images are probably two of my most strongest, but, again, there's so much more that's going on than just taking a picture, so much more.
There's very big undertones to images like that unless you scroll through Instagram and maybe read the captions, there's got to be some sort of crazy thing happening in a photograph to capture somebody's eyes to almost want to stop and read what's going on in some of these. You get the phone and you're just scrolling.
And I'll give you a prime example of how important this can be. The guy that I was telling you about, right? Captured him on 27th Avenue in Van Buren. And he ended up being a cousin of several people that I knew.
Oh, wow.
Right? On a personal level. And they hit me up and said, hey, man, that's my cousin. Like, where did you find him? Like, how did you manage to capture that? And that image, unfortunately, for him, which is, like I said, unfortunate, he was in prison for a long time. But that was a point of pride for him, his family sharing with him that, that image has been exhibited and galleried and shown, plenty of times over. Again, it was a point of pride for him, and it was something that he looked forward to and wanted to do more, once he got out. So it certainly can be a very positive experience for somebody.
And I hate using the word literally, but that literally changed that guy's life. Sounds like.
Yeah, well, and his mom, when her and I talked, she cried, because she was like, you've captured him at his lowest point, on the streets, no shoelaces, shirt off, straight tatted down, burnt from the Arizona heat, but you've given him such strength. You've shown him to be somebody who's prideful, and there wasn't any beating around it though, like it was as raw as it was gonna get, man, but for her, she could see what it was that her son was about, and I think he's definitely very aware, of how impactful his image was, and think about that just for a second, if he understands that people look at him and see strength and they see power and they see somebody who's viable, that can change his direction. Not necessarily, I don't know that that's 100% going to happen, but that possibility is certainly there.
But even just talking to his mom and looking at the photograph, mm-hmm. She saw her son in a completely different way than she saw it with her own eyes.
She was able to say, like, wow, like you really captured him for who he really is, not just some homeless drug addict who's on the street, and that certainly meant a lot. Yeah, it certainly was a point of pride for me, but that's how they all are. Yeah. Literally, man. And again, not to use the word literally, but that's how they all are. Every one of those images has a story for me. Every one of those images has a point of pride for me, and I've been doing it for so long. Mm-hmm. I got my first camera when I was 12, man. I've been shooting forever.
Yeah.
So, but every image I can tell you what was going on, what the premise was, what the experience was, how we were feeling, what we were doing. Yeah. they're all personal.
Well, let's harp on that for someone who wants to all of a sudden go out and make a series of homeless people as well. What is your what would you tell someone who's going to start that project in order to keep it from being a cliche or keep it to being dishonest? At one point, do you go, hey, if you're going to do this, do it like this?
Wow, that's a tough one, man. I would say to not do it that way. To not embark on that journey with the motives being solely about the imagery.
Okay.
If your goal is activism and support, then embark on that journey. Go down that road, and if some experiences are captured, of what's going on, then yeah, share it. But certainly don't make it your end game, because
don't make it just to puff up your portfolio.
No, it's not going to go well for you.
Yeah.
Like I said, embark on that journey with being supported.
It seems like in that sense, would you be okay with if the support was honest and true, if the photography was more or less secondary and not as skillful in that aspect? Or do you think that if you're going to embark on a journey of supportism and decide that you're going to do photographs, know what you're doing photographically, composition wise,
I'd like to see that on all aspects, no matter what you're capturing. I'd like to see people challenging themselves to be as proficient as they could be. And again, going back to the growth curve and the learning curve and everything else that everybody experiences, because we're all constantly growing, but
or supposed to be, right?
You're supposed to be, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Supposed to be, man, because we know that isn't always happening. But yeah. I mean, certainly be the best that you possibly can, and the information is out there. The information is truly out there. It's so feasible to grasp. And even if digitally that's not your thing, then get with somebody who's shooting, man. Get with somebody who's doing it well. Use what it is that they've been able to grasp, through those experiences, and use it to your benefit. That's certainly what has helped me. My mother being my primary mentor, and working with plenty of photographers, across my career so far. And it's not, you don't go into it saying, well, I'm going to see what I can grasp from this person. It's just, you become friends, and you become, true artistic partners, if you will, whenever you guys are out working together. And, they may be picking up something for me, and I'm picking up something for them, and just that exchange is occurring. So, but if you're going to do it, embark on it so that you're going to say, I did that the best that I possibly could with the tools that I had, with the information and skill set that I had at that moment.
As honestly as I could.
As honestly as you possibly could. Absolutely, man. I mean, sure, it may not be as compositionally or technically, proficient as you want it to be, but it was real, and that's okay.
How do you become more easily accessible to someone who's trying to figure out information from you? I know that I'm trying to, with the film community and other communities as well, I feel like I've been doing this for a long time, and I do feel like I got a lot of information, but somehow I feel like maybe there's a little stench of arrogance to me or something like that, where I feel like I might not be as easily accessible to everyone. Do you have any tricks or trades to be able to say, hey, you know what, I can help you with that anytime you want to know? Is there something that, is there like an extra step that might be missing to becoming friends with,
For me, no. I mean, unfortunately, I can't really offer any insight into that, you know, because
you're just
although I may, you know, feel like I'm approachable. I mean, there may be people who look at my work and go, "Shit, you know, I'm not talking to that guy." You know what I mean? Or you know, it may present that way. And fuck, man, I don't care who you are. I really don't give a shit who you are. There's a sense of arrogance to us all. You know, there's got to be some egocentric motivation there, man. You know, that's a drive. You know, that's what keeps you going. You know what? I want to make that picture just a little bit better than what I'm seeing. You know, and that's okay too. You know, I don't have any issues with that. I mean, shit.
I was telling somebody the other day too, where we were talking about ego and arrogance, and I'm like, okay, well, from my perspective, it takes a little bit of ego to hit a 95 mile an hour fastball. It takes a little ego to knock somebody down and tackle him who's a bigger athlete than you. It takes an ego to be a fighter pilot and have a big ass plane at your disposal. And I think a lot of times it's trying to get that ego in check a little bit and try to, in this sense, I think photography is different to where we need to have technical abilities to manage the camera, the machine. It's not just paintbrushes and clay, you know, even though, of course, they have their own techniques as well, but there's a little math involved in whatever it is that you're doing. And at the same time, you got to get to the point where you're going to compose and create something in there. So, or create a piece of work, create a piece of art. So in that aspect, I think I don't like how some photographers or some people have let go of that ego and let it run amok somehow, and it's getting bad mojo too.
Yeah, and you know, like with everything else, man, being able to balance it, you know, to let it be a motivator, to let it drive you to separate yourself but stay true to who you are. So yeah, it's a double-edged sword, certainly, you know. But I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing at all.
Yeah.
You know, again, check, you know, keeping it all in check and knowing when my ego is probably the strongest when I'm at home, you know?
Yeah.
Because that's my safe zone.
That's where you're most comfortable.
Yeah, I mean that's when I can talk some major shit if I have to.
Yes.
You know? But I don't want to be that guy either though that's like you know, you don't ever want to be that guy where people say, "Man, that guy's work is badass, but he's a dick." You know? Like you don't want to be that dude either. I mean, it's just not that's not my that's not where I want to be. You know what I mean? Because I enjoy talking to people, you know, about their art and what it is that they're creating, and you know, if they happen to be photographers, even better, you know, because then an exchange is happening, you know, most definitely at that point. Not that it isn't with other artists, but you know, there's a common ground, you know, that we both can be on at that point. So
I was telling somebody the other day about, fuck it, I'll talk. I don't watch Roman Polanski movies. And everybody, you know, says, "Oh, he's this, he's that, he's awesome," blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't have to watch a Roman Polanski movie. Again, having somebody make something that's, you know, a dick or an asshole, the guy's a rapist. He's a convicted rapist. I don't need to support anything that he does. And my argument is there's too many good people out there making great art. Why be fixated on that guy? Why follow that guy? Why support that guy? And there's a bunch of other stories, you know, insert any Me Too movement thing that's been happening for the past. Well, I don't have to go see that comedian anymore because there's thousands of people that are just as funny or funnier, and I don't have to support that guy because he's also misogynist.
Yeah.
So I don't, in a lot of ways, being that guy that's an asshole and with great work, it doesn't mean anything anymore. Yeah, the art. How can the art hit someone in an emotional moment?
Yeah, and you know, all the galleries, all the exhibits that I've been able to be a part of, right? They're meeting the people and that exchange that's occurring, that conversation, that that those doors that are opened up, even if it's just for 2 or 3 minutes, to have that exchange going on, those all mean something, man. And I don't want to be I don't ever want to be that guy that's not accessible. I just won't do it. And there's been more than one instance when I've had a show going on, and we're 100% supportive of youth artists. We're giving them the opportunities to have their first showing, to understand what it's like, to understand the processes, to understand, what that whole experience is about. So again, I don't ever want to be that guy who's not accessible.
Yeah, it's just not good for anyone.
It isn't. It really isn't. It's not healthy. And I don't want to present that vibe to anybody. I don't want my sons, getting that vibe either. It's just not. It's like I said, it's just not healthy. Yeah.
After doing this for so long, what keeps you motivated? How do you search for your next project, or how do you work as far as continually creating work, having a creative output?
Well, there's certainly life is always occurring. There's always a story. There's always somebody or something that needs to be captured. And I for the longest time, it was like, okay, digital's in one bag and film is in the other. And it's like, here, hand me the film real quick and let me capture this while I'm shooting the digital at the same time and everything else. You know what I mean? So I don't know that I ever really fall off the creative train. It's always occurring. It's always happening. And the past 2 years, I've been in the digital program over at PC. So, that's taken up a lot of time. So, managing the output that was required, to get through that program over there at the college took a lot of time. A lot of time, I should say. But
more of a technical approach to.
Yeah, because they certainly wanted the commercial aspect, traveled upon the Adobe, work was nonstop. The design work, all the digital elements that have to go into that, and the portrait work, the fashion work, all the stuff that they want to see you tackling. I mean, it took a lot of time, but the creative process never really ends. It never really ends, and I try and keep my camera with me like full time. I'm walking out the door and I'm going, shit, today might be the day that I'm going to need my camera and I'm not going to fucking have it and I'm going to regret it, And it's like, okay, I'm going back to get my camera real quick, man. Just drop it in the trunk. So
always carry your camera, huh?
Always, man. Always, as much as we possibly can. I'm like, fuck, I forgot my camera today. But yeah, it happens.
Do you care if it's digital or film, or do you approach one different than the other?
No. I mean, film is always going to be, where my love is. Film is, for me, is forever. And if the lights were cut off tomorrow, man, and Instagram, self imploded, how much of these people's work would be left?
Yeah.
But I can go to my book and I can pull out my negatives and say, like, here, I have this film slide. I have this negative here. I can produce that picture again if I needed to. But I think film just presents differently, man. And I think there's something truly artistic about a person capturing with their film camera. You have to understand what's occurring, and whether at the point in your career when it's almost instinctive, and you just go through those motions automatically and you're able to identify what needs to be done, or whether it takes you a little bit more time, But yeah, I think film will always be that.
Yeah. I think,
and I see it with you too, when I saw your Mamiya, I was like, yes, another film shooter,
Yeah.
So
I don't think people, I have a love-hate relationship with the hipsters, and
I feel you.
apologizing to the hipsters out there, anyone that might be listening, but they did make film more accessible now. Like, film was fading out, and some of the film stocks are no longer made. Kodak decided to bring back a couple. And it's because of hipsters, because they went out and they were going to buy, $10 a roll for a film or whatever it is that they were going to, because it's cool. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it is 35 millimeter and things like that.
Right.
And a lot of kids in this film community are really getting into film because it's different. Maybe their grandparents did it or something like that. But what I'm trying to instill is that the bigger the camera, the more separated you are from digital. While the 35 millimeter camera can do what a DSLR can do, and maybe you step up into the medium format if you have $25,000 and step up into the digital format.
Right.
When you start dealing with medium format and large format with the cameras, there's things that those cameras can do that can't be done with a digital DSLR camera,
sure,
unless you know Photoshop. Everything else is done in camera. So in a way, well, film, obviously, we love film. I'm trying to approach some of these film communities like, don't be afraid of the big fat cameras. They're probably more artistically liberating than anything digital that we have right now, at least in this century. So.
Yeah, and unless like you said, you want to drop, $45,000 on on a Hassie,
yeah,
that's going to get you into that same genre, if you will, or same league,
mm-hmm.
of medium or large format cameras. Yeah. I think that's a benefit, though, for some of us who are true lovers of those cameras, because I don't think they've hit the resurgence level that, say, the 35 millimeter has. So they're still kind of accessible for us, as far as price wise is concerned. Not that, I mean, I wish that wasn't an issue for me, but the fact that we can still grab those large format cameras for $500 or $1,000, you know what I mean, is still kind of nice, But I mean, let's just be honest. If you look at some of what is considered the most impactful work, photography wise, they probably were done with medium or large format cameras.
Yeah,
we can't deny that. So.
Aside from like war photography or something like that.
Well, yeah, and I mean, that's...
You're not going to carry around a field camera.
No, yeah, and, I mean, when I got my first, F1, it was all about that Vietnam War journey, that occurred. I was like, man, I got to get one of those. I want to try that too. I remember early on, and yeah, so it's, again, what tool is going to be the most beneficial to you, and what's going to give you the most creative, and artistic liberation.
Yeah.
But yeah, certainly those medium large format cameras are a beautiful thing, man.
They are. I wanted to touch, though, because you do spend some time in LA, and what do you think? And I have an issue with Phoenix, and I have, as far as, because I'm really big on music, and it just, the music community here isn't where it's at. But overall, in general, I think obviously Phoenix isn't the big artistic hub that it is. From your perspective, being, seems like you spent a lot of time obviously in Los Angeles.
Right.
What do you think we're missing? What do you think that our community needs to explore or needs to get to in order to maybe have a more artistic community where we're sharing and coming together more often and doing art shows more often here in our communities? Or am I just blind and not seeing it?
Wow, man, I think that's a conversation that could probably take us a month, to really get into. But, you know, California as a whole, it being such a melting pot of cultures, and I think Hollywood is my personal take on Hollywood is that this is fucked up to say, right? But it's a farce. You know what I mean? It's all about the image that's presented to the rest of the world, But once the lights go off, they're just putting one pant leg on, like the rest of us, man, But I think Arizona, for a long time, had a very negative, stereotype that was attached to it, with some of the political experiences and just the mindset of Arizona. But there's a lot of positive things that are occurring here. Are you familiar with the gallery down in South Phoenix? Have you been there, Sagrado?
No.
Okay, so get a chance to check them out. Okay. They are certainly doing fantastic work. Shows almost every month. Really providing.
Sagrado, you said?
Yeah, Sagrado, and I'll send you the link so you can share it with your listeners. But they're doing shows that like the last show that's ending tonight is we had is the Desierto, right? So it's all women's work, and they're just on the edge of that envelope, if you will, and always being, pushing those doors open and providing people the opportunities to show their work. And Roosevelt, it's changed a lot. Mm-hmm. When that whole art scene really dropped into the valley, I think it was raw and it was energetic, and I think it's maybe moved a little bit away from that. But I think there's a lot of positivity that's going on here in the valley. I don't really have the answer on what it's going to take, to get people's minds open to the point that they may be in Southern California, or on the East Coast in New York or things of that nature. But hopefully, right? Hopefully, and I think it's going to take steps, by people like you, people like me, people, who own these galleries, the artists who are out there creating, to just keep moving forward and saying, hey, we're here. Mm-hmm. We're doing work that's just as important anywhere else, and it's just as creative and just as beautiful. So yeah, I think that the more that we continue to unite and support each other, it's just going to get better.
Yeah, good. I hope so.
I do too. I really hope so. I think that it's a little frustrating sometimes, and I think you can understand that, because it doesn't always lend itself, to the creative mindset, but there's certainly people who are living it and doing it every day, to try and provide a 180 experience for the rest of us,
Which I think is so important, and again, that's exactly why I'm doing this.
Yeah, and everybody's part, everybody's, everybody's journey is important, and like this, providing an opportunity for people to become aware of what I'm doing, and, mm-hmm. and giving your viewers even more experiences. Those are just positive steps, to keep Arizona vibrant. But unless you're traveling, and you're getting down into some of these areas that you may not think there's something going on, it's not always easy. Mm-hmm. You almost have to keep in have a large network of people that you're working with and talking to, and just being supportive. So yeah. And
how you touched upon being aware of you, and we haven't gotten what my question is, how would you describe yourself as an artist to our community as far it's a terrible question, but we've gone through this conversation, and I feel like at one point we can go on forever, but we'll probably just have this be part one, if that's okay with you.
Sure, sure.
How would you portray yourself, or what would you like people to think as far as when they see your work? And aside from it, your work really does speak for itself. It's got a theme.
Thank you.
It's got style. It's got vibe. Your Instagram is very well curated. Is there something that we're missing from your Instagram that you would like to add on there, as far as like that maybe it's not being captured just by scrolling on my phone and reading?
Well, Instagram is a positive tool, right? But in its format, it doesn't necessarily allow people to really grasp what it is that you're doing. As far as like the compression values and getting a true sense of what an image is like without seeing it in person, what have you. I don't know that I really have an answer for you on that aspect, because I'm true. That's probably the best way to describe me, man. I'm not. You don't have to guess with me about what it is that you're going to receive that day. It doesn't change. I'm very personable. I've been fortunate that I've had a long list of experiences, and we can touch on this if we want.
Oh yeah.
But I am a photographer. I mean, that is the bottom line. I don't paint. I don't sing. Can't dance anymore. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, at the end of it all, I can honestly say now that I'm coming to terms and being okay with saying I'm an artistic photographer. This is what I do, and this is what I've done, and will continue to do. There's not going to be any changing that. I'm not gonna join a rock band next week and have a new identity. It's just not going to happen. Yeah, and life for me, it could have taken plenty of different turns. I don't know if you want to go into that at all.
Yeah,
as far as a little bit of my life experiences.
Yeah.
Very very early on, it was almost determined that my life journey was going to be Ivy League. I was, in university courses, by the time I was like 10 years old, being recruited to, top prep school here in the state. And that's kind of where my journey was headed. He was going to go off to, Johns Hopkins, or he was going to go off to Harvard or Yale or whatever it may have been. And, that was going to be his journey. But at one point, this light clicked on and said, you know what? That's not what I'm about. That's not what I want to do. That's not where I want to be. That's not where I want my story. I don't want it to be written that way. And I took a left turn.
Is there something specific that triggered that light to come on?
I think it was a conversation with my mother, and her really sharing with me what her experiences were. And I knew them already, but just having that conversation that day in the car. And it was just like, wait a minute. There's so much more work that could be done. There's so much more that I possibly could be doing than running off to an Ivy League school and, making buttloads of money, and, the left turn started at that point. And it's, I started my work with, the United Farm Workers. By the time I was 18 years old, 19 years old, I was, supporting that movement. And, it just kind of has continued, along those lines. But yeah, like for example, like have you seen the movie Spare Parts
No.
with George Lopez, where he's the instructor for that science and engineering program,
No.
the robotics? Yeah, I was the first generation of that team.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Okay.
it's just kind of been those kind of things that I've been fortunate to have been a part of, but being in education for 10 years, 12 years, advocating for special needs children, working for the federal government, and being in the classroom, and, having that side of my experiences was positive.
And you're carrying your camera the whole time through this?
Always had my camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, always had a camera. And, so back like when we talked a little earlier, in 04, 05 is when it was like, okay, you really got to do something because you have a talent that's not being invested enough in, and, sometimes I look back on it and go, okay, yeah, that was a good choice. And other times like, damn, I should still be making a lot more money.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with it at the end of the day.
There must have been something in the air in 2004, 2005, because that's exactly where I was. 2003, 2004, 2005. I had that same realization where, you got to do something with this, and
Yeah, and I think for me, it wasn't like I identified that people enjoyed seeing my work, but I wasn't really grasping that it would get on a global scale, like it has for me, So
almost like you're still finding your voice as to what or
yeah, most definitely, and the digital age that we're in now has certainly helped, and has made it much more feasible for me to network and share, my work across the world. But at that point, it still wasn't as large as it is now. So
yeah, it's like I tell people, it's like you could play the guitar, but you can find out it'll take a little longer to find out what you want to play, and the camera is just another instrument in that aspect too, I think.
Yeah, and
or whatever your creative output is.
It when I look back at some of those images that was occurring around that time, those are still for me, I think, some of my favorite pieces. Because some of those images were still captured, with film. The digital, the digital mindset really wasn't. I mean, obviously, it wasn't what it is that we're chained with now.
Yeah.
So.
And to the same, what was it? Was there anything else specific that came up in around 2004 and 2005 that made you take it seriously? What was there any specific thing that happened during that time too, or how did you come to that realization too?
I saw occurring. How can I best put this? When the digital age, when the digital camera was born, right? I was able to identify at that point, like, shit, this may not be a good thing, with the way that technology is going to advance. Is it going to lead to watered down production? Is it going to lead us to a point where, people are just shooting just to shoot because it's feasible and it's easy, and it's going to make it just so anybody can do it. Where before it was like, oh, if you had a camera, quite possibility was high that maybe you were a professional, and you knew what you were doing with it. So, I think there was that motivation to be like, okay, I really need to separate myself a little bit more. I really need to make sure that I'm doing something that's creatively viable to who I am, and it's going to keep me ahead of the game, if you will. Not in a negative way, not not like I said, not bashing on anybody else's work, but just to
not
keep
competitive.
just to keep myself moving forward. And I can honestly say, and this is a positive thing, that, and I'm not going to name drop, right? Because I don't do that kind of shit. But there's some of the photographers here in the Valley will tell you, like, yeah, Johnny's work got me started.
Mm-hmm.
Johnny's work really showed me that I could produce and I could make things happen, with the camera. And it's nice to hear.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's nice to know that, okay, you have positively impacted somebody else's work.
Yes.
And opened that door for them. Yeah.
And
it also may be a sign that I'm just getting old.
Well,
I mean, it's just, I don't know, man. I don't know. It just comes with it.
I think that the digital, in that aspect, I think what the digital camera did was, in my opinion, and I'm going to shit talk a little bit. I hate wedding photography. And I think the digital camera helped expose how bad digital or wedding photography was. I mean, there's three wedding photographers that I've come across in the internet where I'm saying, oh, they're doing great work. Mm-hmm. And they're all out of LA and Orange County. And I don't see, and the thing that about wedding photographers is that they might not be creatively where they should be, but they're great salesmen or saleswomen. And it's just like they are making, I know some of them are making stupid money on that.
Yeah, it's a very lucrative business.
On very mediocre work.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at that in the beginning, I looked at that a long time, and I'm glad early on I decided along the same lines as I don't want to shoot weddings. I tell people I'm a photographer with a day job because I don't fucking shoot weddings.
Yeah.
And I've shot a couple for friends, but it's, hey, this is my wedding gift. And it's like, well, we want to pay you. I'm like, no, don't worry. Again, letting ego go in the way. It's like, you can't afford me. If you really wanted to pay me, you're not going to pay me anything that's worth my time or my while, or, you can give me beer, but this is my wedding gift to you, happy marriage sort of vibe. But yeah, there's, the digital age didn't kill my vibe. I mean, I'm not any more afraid of everyone owning a digital camera than I am everyone owning a guitar or electric guitar. And that's what all the people are up in arms. Oh, everyone's got a camera now. Everyone's got a cell phone. Everyone's a photographer now. And I like what you were saying earlier, that I am a photographer in the sense that you're a photographer separated from the word photographer is so loosely applied to. You will never say, I'm a guitarist because I have a $25,000 rig set up. And then the minute somebody listens to you play, they know, no, dude, you're not a guitarist.
Right.
But in this day and age, we live to where you can have a $10,000 setup and go, I'm a photographer, and everyone believes you because they don't understand what makes a good image or not.
Sure.
In that aspect, from that point of view, how do you think we can teach people to look at a photograph and extract more out of the artistic quality and emotional content of it than just having it be a snapshot to them?
I think conversations like this are certainly going to be key, right? But I also believe that getting photographers to identify who it is that, and the people that have done it for so long, right? And going back to some of the early work and being able to identify that, wow, this person was capturing it with film, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
And
bless you.
And thank you. And understanding the leverages that proper composition provides, right? How we get there, again, just bringing awareness, challenging these younger photographers to break out of their comfort zones, get educated, whether traditional or whether that's partnering up with somebody, getting under somebody's wing. And even if it's just being a student of the work, I study work every day. Every day I'm looking at old work, new work. I'm looking at how was that accomplished? What went into that? What were the technical, draws? What was the personal draw? What was going on? What was the motivation? I mean, being a student of the work, I think, will provide them with the ability to identify what is filtered garbage, and what is a beautifully captured image. And I don't want to, if somebody would say to me, hey, I want you to take my pictures, but I want you to, fucking layer them with these filters, and I want you to do all this color work, and I want you to be this and be that, I'll be like, man, I'm going to lose some money today, but you probably want to hit somebody else up, because it's just not.
Yeah, I've used that line.
Yeah, it's not where I'm at, man. You know what I mean? I don't want to be that photographer. I don't want to be doing that kind of work. So yeah, and it's hard to grasp at times because, am I giving up, $150, $200 an hour, $300 an hour, whatever it may be, because that's what they want done? Yeah, it's gonna hurt. You know what I mean? But at the same time, like, shit, I got to stay true to what I'm doing. A conversation I had with a like ambassador, he said this. Yeah, they may be making money at the moment, but 10 years from now, is their work going to be viable? Is their work going to be reflective? And is it going to stand for something, Or is what you're doing that you maybe didn't get paid for going to be the work that's going to be, what people are talking about? So, yeah, it's hard,
Yeah,
it's difficult to,
I don't know if you're like me. I sometimes follow some Instagram accounts to know what not to do, as opposed to be inspired by some photography. I'm like, ooh, yeah, I got to remember not to do that. I got to remember not to do this.
Yeah, there's times, where I'm looking at it and I'm going, fuck. Like, wow, and then I'm looking at it and I'm going, 3,000 fucking likes. Like, what's going on here? Like what? No, that's garbage, and I shouldn't say that, right? But I'm not necessarily that the image was garbage, but maybe the filters that were used or the presentation of it or whatever it may have been, is just like, man, but hey, if that's what they're doing and their people like it, cool. Just not going to be me.
Going back a little bit, as far as getting people educated, how important do you think is to have a real art show and a printed photograph, or is that not something you believe in?
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it should be something that we all strive to do, right? And when I produce, exhibitions, right? When I do these art shows, it's full on cultural experience. You're getting the printed pieces, right? That are professionally exhibited, right? It's not just, oh, bring me a piece and I'm going to throw it up. No, it has to be done professionally, artistically, proficiently, right? There's food going on. There's cars outside lined up. There's tamales. There's arroz. There's frijoles. There's music that's occurring. There's plenty of experiences for children to be comfortable but there's also that side of people that come in and go, okay, this is a serious event. This is serious work that's hanging up on these walls, So yeah, most definitely, I think that's something that all artists should be hoping for. That they can get their work hanging and shared with other people.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to also establish. Like at one point, my initial thought maybe about 6 months ago was like, no, everything needs to be printed either in the dark room or in some sort of manual process. But I'm at a point now where like let's just display your work, even if you just print it on your little printer at home, because the final outcome of a photograph is the tangible thing that you look at, the thing that you frame, the picture of your mom, your grandma, your great grandma on the mantle somewhere that at one point meant something, as opposed to having that same picture just in your pocket all the time now.
Yeah, and it provides I think it provides a level of excellence that motivates other artists.
Yes.
It gives them something to want to achieve. It gives them something to really keep working towards. And again, it's not the end game of it all, but it's a positive experience and definitely should be hoped for. And I've been all over, man. Whether it's Museum of Latin American Artists in Long Beach, London, Japan, like wherever. I mean, we can talk about these things on and on, right? But each time is important. Each time means something, and each time it's like, shit, do I want to go 20 by 30? Do I want to go 11 by 14 this time? Like, what do we want to do? And it's always an investment, making sure that the prints were done well and the frames are quality and, the matting is done professionally and everything else. And, there's just a certain tangible, wealth in having that printed photo.
Yeah. So, I touching on what you just said, it almost like, if I have an art show, and I had an art show a couple months ago where I want people to, if they don't take anything else away from it, hopefully they look at some of my shitty work and go, you know what, I can do that and I can do that better, to which I would say, do it.
Yeah.
And learn and print. And at the end of the day, maybe you will have an art show too. And the cycle begins again when somebody else looks at that, because I love shooting rotting fruit or whatever. That's just my still life thing. Somebody, oh man, look at that banana. Maybe I can shoot a pear, or maybe I can shoot something else, and being inspired to do so I'd say in a low key way.
Yeah, and it's if that stirs their emotions enough to motivate them, then we're impacting. We're doing we're doing what I believe we set out to do. And that's stir those emotions. That's get those people to try and connect, on that visual space, on a personal level, on an artistic level, on a commercial level, however it may be that they're connecting, but just provide that opportunity to connect. I have a show coming up in September down at the Sagrado Gallery that we talked about. And,
cool.
And it's going to be, we talked about this and it's like, okay, do I want to drop new work, or do I think it's time now that I can do a 20-year retro, and really, provide 30 pieces, that I believe really sum up where I've been for the past 20 years, 25 years. So gallery exhibitions are always a positive. Going back to what your initial question was, I'd love to do them more than what I am now, and I think, I may be at, well, I have a few, that I've done. So yeah.
I love gallery exhibitions, but I have friends that would normally not be part of that scene. So I've got this idea, I shot this picture of some tire shop over here on 16th Street down here that I love, and it was amazing. I was like, you know what if I can get the owner of the shop and his friends to come to an art show of the businesses that I shot there?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've had experience. I was like, why don't I have the art gallery at the tire shop?
Sure.
Or might not have the art gallery at the taco shop,
all those ideas are extremely viable. I think that traditional gallery exhibitions in the brick edifices are wonderful, but pop-up shows on the street corner are just as viable. It's getting the printed work out there. It's getting the work visible, and if it's at the taco truck, even better, man. Grab some food while you're there and enjoy some art. It doesn't have to be bougie, man, to be top tier.
Yeah.
I'm 100% supporter of keeping it raw. I've been on both sides of the coin. I know what it's like to okay, I'll tell you a personal experience. And I'm not gonna bash a gallery, all right? I'm not gonna name drop the fucking gallery. But it was a very high level show in Southern California, right? And the curators got all of our work and they were like, "No, fuck this. Like, we're not gonna display this work," right? And it came to the point where we said, if you don't display one artist's work that has been chosen, handpicked, then we're all fucking bailing, right?
Wow.
Right. So just because it's a high, quote unquote, prestigious gallery doesn't mean that it's where you want to be, So, yeah, it was a banging of the heads, if you will, because we all had to come together and be like, okay, either we're standing unified, or not. We're gonna fail. So they recanted, and they put up the work, but it could have been anywhere and the work would have been the same. So like if it's taco, if it's corner, if it's in the hood, if it's in a prestigious gallery, just make it happen. Just make it happen and provide the opportunity for people to get out and experience.
Yes.
Get them out there, get them engaged, get them thinking about, wow, how is it that I can be creative? How is it that I can produce? And that goes back to what your initial question was about, how do we get to a point where this is just, a non-stop experience here in the Valley? How do we get to the point where there's just shit happening all the time? So it's going to take some work, but yeah, it can happen.
Yep, you sure can.
Yeah. And,
there's potential.
There's certainly potential. And I think, us artists who are native to the Valley, we've seen it change, where we know what it was like. We've lived through that, the neighborhood that is now, pulling, $500,000 values on their properties, 15 years ago was, a quarter of that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So things are changing, but I think there's a definite move towards trying to keep it culturally vibrant and true to what it always has been. And it's not an easy task, but I certainly think there's a definite lean towards that.
And you're confident that we have the artist or can cultivate the artist in order to
absolutely
make that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think there's I think the artists that are here and that are going to be here are gonna eventually, just bring more awareness. Yeah, I don't think that it's ever going to be like anywhere else. I think it's going to have its own identity, and like New Mexico is probably a 180 from what South Central LA is, but there's still a lot going on over there. And yeah. I think it's just likewise here. I think it's just going to take some more work.
I'm very ambitious. I want Phoenix to be the next Seattle, as what Seattle was in late 80s, early 90s with music. They're just from the small pool of music that I've seen here, there's potential as well too, and then from the visual arts as well. And again, I wish it was just promoted more. And I wish I was educated, like Sagrado. I didn't know that. I mean, and I'm sure there's a bunch of other little galleries that I haven't been to that I need to go check out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, you know, I'm very proud to say that, you know, one of very, very, very soon, probably as early as next week, I'll be working out of a gallery which is right downtown, and it's called Create 818, right? And you know, Eric Rocha is he's the owner of that place and is just doing phenomenal audio music work out of this gallery, but has a beautiful studio there, you know, and him and I have had this conversation going for a while. But again, it's just another spot that is full of life, you know, that's constantly in the creative process, but maybe not, you know, maybe people aren't 100% aware of it, you know, like they should be, you know, but again, just networking and conversating and having those doors open will provide the opportunities for them.
What's next for you as far as any more showings besides those two, or?
Well, I'll be shooting out of that gallery.
Okay.
You know, now, pretty much full time. We got to work on the show coming up in September.
Okay.
So, I think last count, of, man, I may have 20,000 images archived,
Mm-hmm.
And for the longest, I never showed an image twice, So, looking at what's going to be the most reflective of the past 20, 25 years and, if there's anything new we wanted to put out there. So, yeah, there's a lot of work to do. I got a couple of cars that have to be built and, just
cars.
Just moving along. It's definitely a fun process, man.
So it's cars and cameras for you. You get
cars, cameras. These two young boys at home, and it's it's definitely a journey, but it's one that I'm certainly loving to be on. And like I mentioned a little earlier, the past 2 years in school took a lot of time. Full-time study is no joke, man.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what that's like. And so, yeah, I'm hoping to, just continually, being busy and making new connections. I just, today, off of this podcast, I was going to, officially drop the new website. So the new website is ready.
All right.
So, yeah, one thing that we didn't touch on, and I would like to talk just a tad bit about it, and that's 4 years ago, I became an amputee, and I don't know if you saw that on my IG.
I did.
Yeah. So,
and the interview I read.
Okay. Yeah. So that certainly changed.
Mm-hmm.
That certainly changed where some of the creative drive, came from. And when you're laying in a bed, in a hospital and that surgeon came in and he said, I can't save you. You need to say goodbyes. Like at that point you go, fuck, there's so much more I got to do. There's so much more that I can accomplish. There's so much more that I could share. And yeah, it changed. It changed a lot. It changed a lot on just how passionately creative I wanted to be, but it also dropped that hammer down on the fact that I needed to stay true to what it was that I was doing. I needed to stay 100% on the task of giving people a window into the struggle.
How much did that fuel or change? Did it change your creativity at all? Your photography, the way you looked at the world? As far besides just continuing to stay true, do you think it affected you in different ways? Because I'm sure emotionally that's a big deal.
Oh,
all of a sudden you're like, hey, you know what?
Yeah, there's no denying that, man. I mean, the emotional struggle, and fucking Eiffel Towers that had to be climbed and gotten over, you know what I mean, were undoubtedly, huge. And the first image that I snapped after being amputated was there was a gentleman who needed some assistance, right? He was on the side of the road. And I was like, just stop. Like I'm gonna have to figure this out, but I gotta get to him. Like I gotta get there to see if he's okay. I gotta get there to make sure that there's nothing that I can do, And so yeah, jumped out, still on the cane at the time, and just trekked it on in, and I knew at that point that I was still going to keep moving forward. I was still going to just have to figure it out. Just going to have to make the means to re-identify with who and what I was, and just come to terms with it, and keep moving forward. It requires some changing.
Was it one of those things where like it could be worse attitude or
no, not at all. It was as bad as it could be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, certainly was as bad as it could be.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a total loss of self-identity.
Okay.
There's a total loss of who and what you think you are. And for everybody else, that may not be the case, right? But for me personally, yeah, it was as bad as it could be. I'm not gonna lie. There were times like, could I even make it through that? And now, it's always surprising to me, but in some ways or another, people seem to identify with that. Like, shit, that's the amputee photographer. You know what I mean? Like, that motherfucker rocks, and he's on carbon fiber lake. I don't know how that processes, but it does. So it is what it is, man.
If you could put into words, how big of a mountain, emotional mountain, did you have to climb to more or less start feeling yourself again?
Yeah, that I'm still climbing that mountain.
Mm-hmm.
It's, but you either get up and you square up. That's what I tell people. When we talk about this, I get up in the morning. I square up. I take a breath, and it's like, okay, do you quit today, or do you strap your carbon fiber on and you just keep moving? And that's what I do. I put it on and I keep moving, and at the end of the day, I take it off.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's just part of it. Now for me, it's almost like it's just another part of my tools. And but yeah, that re-identification of who and what I am certainly is a continual process, and I don't know that it's ever going to stop. But I think it's a process that is probably bigger for me than it is for like my family members or people who know me.
Okay.
You know what I mean? They may not see it necessarily that way,
Mm-hmm.
but for me it's every day, And there's times when I'm in the car or something and you just catch a glimpse of the carbon fiber, the titanium or something, and you're like, yeah, it's there, and then you just keep moving.
Mm-hmm.
Keep moving forward, so yeah.
How limited do you think you as far as being creative? Do you think it limited you creatively or just physically and maybe mentally?
Yeah, I don't even know that physically, it's even that much of a limitation,
Mm-hmm.
anymore. The technology that's afforded to us, now it's amazing. I think it was just the emotional, and mental barriers that needed to be overcome. And like I said, some days are easier than others. Sometimes I cry.
Mm-hmm.
I cry and I get angry, and then you just take a breath and
Keep going.
Yeah, you just keep moving. Just keep moving forward, man. And that's it.
The nickname, does it affect you when they call you the amputee photographer, or that's the dude, or does that affect you at all? Or
it's surprising. It's surprising to me because I never could have imagined that it could have been a marketing tool.
Okay.
I never imagined that people would identify me in that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, I've had to come to terms with it because my business card is the lower part of my body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in the LA River under the old bridge, and I have a camera in hand, and my rivvy's there, right?
Uh-huh.
So obviously,
so Terminator.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like I'm moving forward somewhat with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's still quite surprising. It is. But I also think that we made the decision very early on that if I was going to be, part mechanical, like I was going to show it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't ever going to be not a point of pride. Like I was going to show you that, yeah, my leg is probably $25,000 worth of mechanics here.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And it is what it is. And that's just part of who I am. So, cause we had the options to go, full on, skin sheathing and, you know what I mean? They replicate all that stuff, but nah, I was like, nah, this is what I am. This is who I am. But it certainly was, again, man, just having to re-identify, with who I was. And, because I think we, just as men, we have this, and it's not always, the way it should be, but, we view ourselves as we dominate and we overcome and we figure it out and we're powerful and blah, 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 and all the macho shit that comes along with that, man. And then you're faced with the facts that that's not necessarily the way it is, But yeah, I'm okay with it, but the struggle is there every day. Yeah, but I don't think creatively it's limited me at all. I don't. Yeah. So to answer your question in that sense, yeah.
What about on the other side? Do you think that in some weird way it's opened up some sort of creative possibilities, or maybe you thought of something that maybe you wouldn't have thought of before?
I think that it's opened up doors for me because I think people may be more drawn into what's his story, like what's this guy really about? And it's kind of odd how that occurs, right? But I think when people see, naturally when they see the struggle or they see somebody adapting and overcoming, then, they may just be a little bit more interested, and that may open up a door for me that may not have otherwise been, propped. So, yeah, still interesting though.
I love it. It's inspirational, to say the least, from my perspective. There's I guess you don't know until it happens, but I don't see myself having that some kind of fortitude to, like yours at one point, to be able to overcome.
I think I probably would have said the same thing, that you're saying, but you either quit or you just keep moving forward, man, and the situation is at hand, so it was either like give up and not produce and not be a creative force, or not be a father, not provide for those two boys that are still very, very dependent on you, and the choice then becomes real easy, like that's not an option, it's just not there for us, so you figure it out, and yeah, it's not easy. It's not. But sometimes people will say, "Man, I would have never known." Like you're walking along, like you'd never know. Well, just technology.
Yeah.
It's just technology. So,
and that's essentially like in case someone would encounter that, or some sort of, maybe not just a physical, but maybe even an emotional amputation. you got to keep moving forward, or what would you tell someone who may be in this similar situation, maybe emotionally and physically?
Yeah, that's come to terms with the grief process.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. come to the point where you're able to identify that a loss has occurred, but that's just the nature of life, and find ways to process that, and that's it. It doesn't really, it doesn't take a whole lot to try and grasp, like you learn to identify that it's a loss. You then learn to identify what the steps are to cope with that, and then also understand that it's a continual process. It just doesn't go away and you're okay. You still keep moving, taking those steps to maintain that healthy mindset and that healthy lifestyle. Yeah, it's a draw. It really is a draw, and like you said, what were the mountains? Man, they were huge. They were just enormous. And yeah, but it is what it is. Put your leg on and keep moving.
Yeah. And you're building cars. There's nothing, and you're still photographing, and there's nothing that's holding you back.
No, nothing that's going to hold me back.
That's great.
I just got to keep doing what it is that I do. And I'm looking forward to the cars here. Is
there a car show coming up?
Yeah, we just had a meeting. Like I said, a couple weeks ago, we talked about this a little earlier, and we're shooting for February.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's going to be here really fast.
Yeah.
So we'll have one done. Yeah, for sure. So,
are you guys going to have it in?
It's the big show here, the super show here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the big super show here in February. So that's kind of what the plan is. So,
good.
But next month we're headed out to the Legacy Show, which is June Father's Day weekend.
Oh, okay.
Down on the Broadway Pier in Diego. So
San Diego, yeah,
it'll be fun.
I don't know. I'm due for a trip to San Diego pretty soon myself. So I was just talking to a buddy today as far as that goes, but I need to make a trip out there sometime this summer.
So how far away were you from like Chicano Park?
I lived. You know where Golden Hill is?
No.
Oh, I could throw a rock to Chicano Park.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you really were
25th and Commercial is Barrio Logan for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
I lived on 25th and B Street, was just
right up the way
hill.
Then, huh?
Yeah, I mean it's just right there. Yeah.
So what would you say living in that area, what were some of your experiences like as far as, activism and seeing, the cultural resurgence and grasp to maintain it there?
Oh, well, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging or anything, but I predicted more or less the gentrification of Barrio Logan and its possibilities when it was still just a dump.
Mm-hmm.
I was telling people, I need to make a studio here. This is where it's going to happen. The buildings are great. This is a great, it wasn't so cool in the 80s. Don't get me wrong. But as it started to more or less clean up, there was a lot of potential there. Now, Barrio Logan is a Roosevelt. It's a First Friday thing. There's a big cultural thing happening there. My friend, Patty, she's an artist, and she's right now, they're cleaning up Barrio Logan. I don't know if they have a big event, but she's really into the scene, she's a real big activist as well, too. Very inspiring, powerful woman and artist. I enjoy watching Barrio Logan grow the last 5 years, but definitely the last 10 years to where there's still it's not a complete gentrification. There's still culture there. I mean, I've been going to Barrio Logan they had some of the best tacos there in some places there, man. Cuatro Milpas is somewhere around there too. If you get there, eat there. They're not going away. And that's what I love about it. How many neighborhoods have you heard where they were, let's just say, had one cultural experience and no longer have that cultural experience anymore because of, property value and gentrification.
Mm-hmm.
And I have I have an issue with gentrification in the sense that property owners and the people that live in the neighborhoods have a say in how much their property value is worth if they were to apply a lot of the same passion that they have for other things. Like, in certain positions, in certain places, like the lowrider community is so, they take beat up cars, they fix them up, and a car that was worth $500 is always in, show ready condition is a $150,000 car. You can do the same thing with your property, and therefore take back the value of the same neighborhood that you live in.
Right.
And I've never understood why that wasn't applied. And while there is still definite economic disadvantages, there's still a lot of stuff you can do on your own, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I've seen that here. Just seeing the gentrification that's occurred, and it's not always positive. I think in a lot of ways it's harmful. Because it displaces generations of people. From those communities, and it almost becomes inaccessible.
Yeah.
At one point or another, and touching a little bit on what I said earlier, as far as seeing the valley, from downtown being a dump that you didn't want to be there after hours, to some of those neighborhoods just producing, property values that are skyrocketing. It's hard to grasp, and I'm not a big fan of it. I almost prefer it to be, that old barrio that it was before.
Yeah.
But that probably, a lot of that goes back to, that's just where I'm from too. That's how I was raised. I miss seeing those old streets and seeing those older houses and knowing the generations of families that were there, and it's just not that way anymore.
Yeah, I wish the things. There's Shermantown, and it's right next to Barrio Logan, and there's a couple other places there, even National City, to where the late 70s and 80s was really tough in San Diego with gangs and things like that. So if you go into those neighborhoods, they're beautiful houses there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're gorgeous, and it's just sad that the mentality at one point just made them run down. And I hope it works in cycles. I hope it gets to the point to where we can see what Barrio Logan was without the violence.
Yeah.
And still have the same cultures apply. And thrive. Still have the same cultures thrive, and have my tacos there, have the bakeries, las panaderias, have la fruteria, and have things that, but on the other side, like I was talking to somebody the other day, I was making the argument that there's a high possibility that you can live in East Los Angeles and not ever have to, in this day and age, not ever have to learn English.
Mm-hmm.
You go everything there is in Spanish,
right.
And you can go, and there's certain parts in San Diego too, and obviously my mom and a couple of her friends, they've lived here or in the United States for the better part of 50 years, and they really can't speak English, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing for our culture, but it shows that you can thrive in certain of these neighborhoods where the culture isn't going away. It's still, thriving, but at the same time, this gentrification thing is a sumbitch.
Yeah.
And it will, like you said, is not completely a good thing unless there's good intentions behind it, and it will eradicate and displace people that have been part of that culture and that community for a very, very long time.
Yeah, and I think the hope, for me is that the forward progress will be propelled by the people that are already there in those neighborhoods, as opposed to outside forces.
Yes.
So, I think if that's how it occurs, then it predominantly will be a positive thing, but that's going to be, just like you mentioned, getting people to understand that you can do it, and it doesn't have to occur with outside force. The house is the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The property is the same. It may just have been renovated a little bit or whatever it may be, but getting that mindset to change is key.
And it's just, I have a buddy who's specifically speaking about real estate. South Park is another neighborhood that was really bad shape in the 80s and early 90s. And he bought a home there. He's really good at spotting out where the next great location is going to be. And he's done it a few times. He bought the house for essentially pennies on the dollar. And he bought the house next to him. And the rent is ungodly. The rent is $3,500 a month for a little itty bitty 2-bedroom cottage. And there's a waiting list. And he's all, see, I told you South Park was going to be it. And now South Park, there are $1 million homes in South Park. Yeah. You go to Golden Hill, there's a lot of great locations in Golden Hill now. And again, another neighborhood that was really shitty. And the neighborhood where I specifically grew up is over a little more inward on 47th and Market. That's a little more, it wasn't ghetto to say, but it definitely wasn't the suburbs. Now they're home selling there for crazy. And I'm like, and it's just
a total mindfuck when you think about it.
Yeah. My parents were talking, the house that we lived in, the mortgage was $220 a month.
Wow.
And it would have been, and we ended up selling it, or they ended up selling it and things like that. But I think it was like 5 years. Wait, no, about 10 years ago, it would have been paid off or something like that. 80, about 15 years ago, it would have been completely paid off, just $220 a month for a house bigger than the one we have here.
Right.
And it's just, again, crazy how
it occurs, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it's just finances and gentrification and ignorance of all that is a really mind fuck. It is just really like trying to help people understand some things certain ways. It's like trying to educate them on the value of a photograph,
sure.
And it's just like some people don't want to learn.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, I've been here. I'll always be here. And it's just like, for sure. But I mean, there's things happening in LA right now where people are being forcibly moved from their home. Even though it's their land. And come to find out, it's just because they're going to build a railroad or a freeway through there.
Yeah.
So somebody's going to make money off of that. So yeah, there's some shady stuff happening when bad guys get involved.
Yeah. When money is the bottom line as opposed to the value of the culture that's been there. So
certainly. And it certainly affects my friend's art in that standpoint too. You see that the harder you want to cling to something that you see that is fading away, the more radical and the more not necessarily violent, but definitely the more, maybe even a little irrational way of thinking starts to cultivate in your head because you're grasping for the last pieces of what was left in your neighborhood. And I think that really affects people's art and people's mindset. And it's something that we're going to have to deal with too. There's the knee-jerk reaction is being angry.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to really come out and I think cloud honest art.
Yeah, I think though, historically, I look at it as sometimes that knee jerk reaction has been a good thing, though, because it sparks other knee jerk reaction and it sparks other minds to want to unify and continue that, for lack of a better word, that regression to what it was. You know what I mean? And regression being a positive term, right? So yeah, it's definitely and I'm glad to hear you talk about it, because that helps me understand that you really know what's and can identify with what's going on here, because these neighborhoods are changing fast, really really fast.
Yeah, there's the funny thing, the thing that you immediately notice in Phoenix that wasn't maybe is not as noticeable in places like Los Angeles or San Diego is that there are streets and there are avenues, and they are completely different culturally. Than you go down Central Ave, you go down the freeway, you go down 10 a little bit, and as soon as you hit those avenues, it's Mexican, it's Latino for sure. You go down a couple down there, and it's really, as opposed to being on this side of it, I don't catch as much Latino and Mexican
no, the vibe is
influences.
Different. Yeah, yeah.
And it's very divided in that sense. And of course, in Los Angeles and in San Diego, there's Barrio Logan and there's East LA and things like that. But throughout the rest of the town, there's always integration. There was always, even in some of the places I lived in with my buddy in Westchester, which is just on the other side of Inglewood. There was never a loss for. There was never a big divide of white.
People.
America, and it was very culturally diverse. Here, it's I can see and don't forget about Scottsdale as well too. It just
and that's why we talked. When you asked about Arizona a little earlier, I just that's why I kind of mentioned that I think the mindset just has to change a little bit, because it is geographically very very ethnically divided. And it's just always been that way, 20 years ago, it was, you knew where the black communities were, and you knew where the Chicano communities were, and you knew, you just knew where you wanted to be if that's what you were looking for.
Yeah.
It was easily identified, and you knew where to go. So,
I mean, this is how I gauged it by taco stands, taco shops, right? I got to go down south and over to get to a taco shop where somebody speaks Spanish. In San Diego, I didn't really have to go that far anywhere in most of the locations to get to a taco shop to I can speak, I can order in Spanish.
Right.
In LA, I didn't have to go far from anywhere to be able to go to a taco truck or a taco stand to be able to, and not that that's like a big measuring stick, but it becomes very obvious when I'm in this part of the neighborhood and I can't go across the street to my taco shop. I have to go down there. I got to go a couple miles that way or a couple miles this way to where I can talk to the lady and make my order in Spanish. And it's just not, again, it's not like some sort of big measuring stick that I have. It's just that it's very apparent here.
Yeah, it is. And let me say this though, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with those areas still being defined that way. Because it's almost like that place has been there for me for 30 years. I want it to stay there. I want it to be that same way. So it again, for lack of a better word, it's just a double-edged sword. You gotta look at it on how it's going to benefit you. So yeah, most definitely, man.
Yeah, and speaking of tacos, if you guys are ready.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Just, a shout out to, my Pegasus Car Club brothers.
Oh yeah.
My brother Joey, who's another photographer. And, just to all my family and true friends, who, I value enormously. And, I hope to see all of them real soon, and let's continue the conversation.
Yes, for sure. I thank you so much. This was a great conversation, and I hope to have another one just before your show.
Absolutely.
And or before any other event that you might have coming up. I think it's very important to talk about these things, and as far as art and moving forward, especially in a community like ours that I don't think has as big a voice that it needs to be.
Sure.
And it's happening, but it's I think it should be bigger broadcast than what's happening right now.
Sure. And just, like I mentioned, if people want to contact me, are interested in collaborating or, working together or just conversating, they can reach me through the IG page or through my website, which is it's simplejohnnyMedina.org. Any avenue to contact me is certainly great. So,
oh yeah,
absolutely.
Oh yeah, we'll definitely leave those.
Yeah,
those in. Thank you so much. Man.
Thank you. Really appreciate the opportunity. It's very valuable to me, to share a little bit about my story. So thank you.
I love it. And again, I hope we do it again soon.
All right. Sounds great.
All right. Thank you again for listening, and enjoy your youth.